We're going to get into two inventions today that are, well, deceptively simple.
So simple you almost don't even think of them as technology.
Exactly. We see their descendants everywhere. But without them, our modern world, our cities, our trade, everything, it just couldn't exist.
We are talking about the wheel and the plow. They first showed up thousands of years ago in places like Mesopotamia. And our mission today is to figure out exactly how they completely rewired human civilization.
Okay, let's start with the wheel, because I think most people, when they picture a wheel, they immediately think of a cart, right? Transport.
Yeah, that's the logical leap.
Hmm.
But what's so interesting is that its first known use, around 3500 BC, had nothing to do with moving things from A to B.
Nothing at all, so what was it?
It was the potter's wheel, a rotating disc of clay.
Huh.
Yeah, early civilizations figured out that spinning the clay let them make perfectly symmetrical pots and bowls way faster than shaping them by hand. That whole concept of smooth, sustained rotation had to be mastered first.
Before they could even think about putting it on a cart.
Right. And when they finally did, the first designs were really basic.
Just solid discs of wood.
That's it. Often just 3 heavy planks fastened together to make a circle. It must have been incredibly heavy.
Which would limit its use right away. But the real trick, I'd imagine, wasn't just the disc itself. It was making it spin properly.
That was the true engineering feat, the fixed axle system. The wheel has to rotate around a central axle, and that axle has to support the cart's entire weight.
So the hole in the center had to be perfect.
Absolutely perfect.
Okay.
If it was too big, the wheel would wobble. Too small, it wouldn't turn. It required a level of precision carpentry that was, for the time, really high-tech.
So let's get into the basic physics. What is the wheel actually doing for us? Why is rolling so much better than just dragging something?
It all comes down to one word: friction.
Okay.
When you drag a heavy box, you're fighting what's called sliding friction. It's the resistance of 2 rough surfaces grinding against each other. It takes a huge amount of force.
Right. I can picture that.
A wheel completely changes the game. It replaces all that sliding friction with rolling friction, which is, just a tiny fraction of the force. It's just so much more efficient.
But you still have friction where the wheel turns on the axle? That constant rubbing must have generated a lot of heat, a lot of wear and tear.
Oh, it was a constant battle. That was the weak point.
So how did they stop their carts from just grinding to a halt or, catching fire?
Lubrication. They had to constantly grease the axle, usually with animal fat or bitumen, which is like a natural tar. It became one of the first sort of specialized maintenance jobs. If you didn't do it, your very expensive cart would just wear itself down and become useless.
That makes the whole thing feel much more fragile than I imagined. So those first solid wheels were heavy, which means they were slow. What was the next big leap forward to get some actual speed?
The solid disc was pretty much a dead end for speed. The breakthrough came much later, around 2000 BC, with a culture called the Syntashta. They invented the spoke wheel.
Ah, so like a modern bicycle wheel, getting rid of all that heavy wood in the middle.
Exactly the same idea. Instead of a solid disc, you have a hub in the center, a rim on the outside, and thin wooden rods, the spokes, connecting them.
That sounds geometrically
It
complicated.
was a massive leap. You had to calculate how to distribute the load, the tension, perfectly evenly across all the spokes. If one was tighter than the others, the whole wheel could just buckle and collapse.
But if you got it right,
If you got it right, you got a wheel that was incredibly light and strong, and that allowed for the chariot. Fast, agile vehicles pulled by horses that completely transformed warfare and communication.
and with faster, more efficient transport, you get an explosion in trade.
A total revolution in trade. Before this, what could you move? Whatever a person or a donkey could carry on their back. So small, high-value things like spices.
But not things you need to feed a city.
Exactly. Suddenly, with carts and wagons, you can transport hundreds, even thousands of pounds of staple goods. Grain, textiles, minerals. You can move bulk items over long distances for the first time.
And when you have heavy carts moving goods between cities, you suddenly need something else.
You need roads, good roads. You can't drag a heavy wagon through a muddy field. So this new transport technology forced the creation of infrastructure.
And those roads don't just carry goods, do they?
They carry everything. People, ideas, languages, culture. Trade networks just exploded across continents, making civilizations richer and more specialized.
Okay, so the wheel is solving the transport problem, but at around the same time, a different invention is solving an even more basic problem: how to eat.
Right. We're talking about the plow. And you really have to understand how miserable farming was before it existed.
It was just poking holes in the ground.
Pretty much. Farmers used simple digging sticks. It was back-breaking, incredibly slow work, one seed at a time. You could only cultivate a tiny plot of land, barely enough to feed your own family.
And the first plows were essentially just big sticks, right? Something you could drag through the soil.
Exactly. Maybe a large, well-shaped branch. You'd pull it through the ground to create a long, shallow ditch. That ditch is called a furrow.
And what's the benefit of that simple action?
It's twofold. First, turning over the soil brings fresh nutrients to the surface, right where the seeds need them. At the same time, it buries all the weeds and the leftovers from the last crop, clearing the field.
So it's preparing the soil and clearing it in one motion. That's a huge efficiency gain.
An immediate productivity boom. One farmer could suddenly cultivate a much larger area of land than before. And that created the single most important thing for civilization to grow.
A surplus of food.
A reliable surplus. The moment a society can consistently produce more food than it needs to survive is the moment everything changes.
Because not everyone has to be a farmer anymore.
Right. That surplus can feed other people, specialists, people who can become soldiers or priests or builders or rulers.
So that's how you get cities.
That is the direct line. The food surplus from the plow is what allows for the growth of the first permanent cities and complex societies.
But even with a plow, a person can only pull so hard for so long. The real jump in power came from taking humans out of the equation.
It did. This was one of the first times humans really harnessed external energy for work. They started using domesticated animals to pull the plow.
Specifically oxen, right. Strong and steady.
Oxen were perfect for the job. But you couldn't just tie a rope around their necks. You needed another piece of tech.
The yoke.
The yoke. A wooden harness that fits over the animal's shoulders, letting them use their most powerful muscles to pull. A team of oxen with a yoke could plow acres in a single day. It would have taken dozens of people to do the same work with digging sticks.
And the plow itself kept getting better, right? They kept adding new parts.
Oh yeah, the innovation didn't stop. They added a coulter, which is like a vertical knife at the front to cut through thick roots. And then came the really big one, the mold board.
What did that do?
The mold board was a curved plate, usually metal or wood, set just behind the cutting blade. As the plow moved forward, this plate would catch the strip of soil that was just cut.
And flip it over automatically.
And flip it over to one side. It automated the whole process of turning the soil. A massive increase in efficiency.
And all of this innovation lines up perfectly with the shift into the Metal Ages.
It does. When people started working with bronze, and especially iron, the tools became so much more durable.
A wooden plowshare would just wear out or break in rocky soil.
Exactly. Large parts of, say, northern Europe have heavy, rocky soil that was almost impossible to farm with wood. But once blacksmiths started making sharp iron plowshares, you could cut through that soil. It opened up huge new territories for agriculture.
And the same thing happened with wheels, right?
Yep. They started putting iron rims on wooden wheels to protect them on rough roads. And this created a new demand in the economy for blacksmiths and metalworkers, which further fueled trade.
So you've got these two systems developing at the same time, the wheel for transport, the plow for food. But they didn't just exist side by side, they started to work together.
They became completely interdependent. You use the plow to create this huge harvest of grain.
And then you need wheeled carts to move all that grain to the city or to storage.
They were a perfect match. And the skills needed to make them, like advanced woodworking and metalworking, were often the same.
They even started combining them, didn't they? Putting wheels on the plow itself.
Yeah, some later designs had small wheels on the plow to help control how deep the furrow was being cut. It gave the farmer more precision.
And we can't forget how the wheel was used for water, too.
The water wheel, a huge deal in drier climates. You could use it to lift massive amounts of water from a river up into irrigation channels.
That then flowed out to the plowed fields. It stabilized the entire food supply.
So you have farming, transport, and water all working in an integrated system. And that efficiency completely changed the structure of society.
Fewer farmers meant more specialists.
Right. And that creates hierarchies, social classes.
So how did people define wealth in this new world?
Wealth became tied to owning the means of production. It wasn't just about what you could do, but what you owned. Owning the best land, the expensive carts, the strong teams of oxen, that was real power.
And these technologies spread everywhere, mostly.
Mostly. In Eurasia and Africa, they were foundational. But it's interesting, in the Americas, they had the wheel, but they didn't really use it for transport.
Why not?
They didn't have the big draft animals, no horses, no oxen to pull the heavy carts. It just shows how critical That link between the tool, the animal, and the transport really was. It was a complete
It
system.
all comes back to harnessing power.
Absolutely. The basic principles, the spoked wheel, the friction-reducing axle, the soil-turning moldboard, they are still the foundations for almost all of our modern machinery, from tractors to high-speed trains. This was the beginning of humanity learning how to systematically shape the environment to meet our needs.
So we didn't just inherit these tools from the past, we inherited the entire social structure that they made possible.
Think about that. How much of your life, the food you eat, the roads you travel on, even the fact that you can have a specialized job, depends on the blueprint created thousands of years ago by a spinning piece of wood and a sharpened stick.
Good luck with your studies. See you next time.